Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here. First of all, we want to thank everybody for being here. And we would like to open up with a prayer if Mr. Farmer would do that for us.
Sure. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for keeping us safe. Thank you for the excellent day outside that you've bestowed upon us. Thanks for just all the many blessings. And we pray that you guide us in all of our decisions and have us have a safe return home. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And I'll make a quick motion to approve last month's minutes.
Motion to approve.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. So the reason we're having the meeting today and what's on our agenda is we have a guest speaker for a presentation from Charleston Consolidated Dispatch Center, Mr. Jim Lake. And Mr. Lake has come up here to explain the process of how, what, when, where, and why they went to a consolidated dispatch center. And I think the main thing we need to take away from his presentation, and of course you can take your own items that you decide, is that it's the overall serving of the constituents of the county, not just particular groups or areas. And I'm very grateful for Mr. Lake to take his time and come up here and give this presentation. So with that, I'm going to introduce Mr. Lake. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much for having me here. Charleston County, we're very proud of what we've done, but we also understand there are challenges that are faced by other communities that are looking at the same thing. So anything we can do to help to be a good neighbor. So I want to tell you a little bit about me, but it's really more to put this in perspective of why I'm even here. So I am the Consolidated 911 Center Director. We actually renamed ourselves the Emergency Communications Center recently. But I am working as a government employee. I am a Charleston County employee. I've got 2 previous consolidations under my belt. I was a project manager, and this company that you see up there, Kimball, actually did the assessment for our consolidation in Charleston County. So I was part of that team even before being director. So I have an extensive knowledge going way back to when we started collecting data for consolidation and the agreement. I'm a former NENA instructor as well. What that means for you all is I teach nationally, and one of the subjects I teach on is consolidation. There are many places across the country, so even as a Charleston County employee, I've done presentations in Idaho, 2 in Colorado, and some others around the country. So I'm very well versed in this topic. I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I wouldn't want to qualify myself as an expert in anything, but I know quite a bit. Here's the 2 disclaimers I want you all to leave with, especially for our audience. I have absolutely nothing to gain from this. So I'm here as a Charleston County employee to tell you about our consolidation and answer any questions you have. I say that because oftentimes you'll get a presentation from a consultant or somebody that wants you to do something because they're going to gain from it. That's not why I'm here. The other piece is that I've learned from doing these, I'm going to talk about consolidation, maybe some good things and bad things about 911 centers. I don't know your centers. I'm not talking about you all. I have not done an assessment of your centers, so anything I happen to say, if it touches close to home, I really have no idea. I have no idea about your centers. This is about some things I've seen before. So that's my disclaimer. So a little bit of a history about us. So in about 2006, Charleston County decided to look into consolidation. The driving factor and what has made us successful all these years is the fact that it was not forced by government. It was actually the chiefs themselves that decided they wanted to do this to the benefit of the public. And so that made that first initial step more successful than others. And so we started off with what you can see for the numbers there, but I'll show you we've grown. So we had 6 law, 11 fire. So we had, about 20 agencies when we first started. We're over 40 agencies now that we provide some type of service for. So when you consolidate, one of the lessons we learned is that when you're doing it successfully, other people want to be part of that as well. So you have to plan for that kind of growth. So we actually began our consolidation process in January 2009. In our case, it took us 4 years to achieve full consolidation, and that was because we didn't have a building to put everybody in. So we had to actually construct a facility to make this possible. But in 2013, we achieved that full consolidation. And when I say full consolidation, almost everybody, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go along, but we answer for all the 911 calls in Charleston County. So any 911 call made in Charleston County, that comes to us. The fact that we are now just looking at revising our IGA, our intergovernmental agreement, gives you a sense of how successful that agreement has been. We have not had to make any changes or amendments to that agreement. We are now looking at that because, 13 years later, it's time. It's time to look at that and see, with all the changes that have occurred, if there's some new language that needs to be added or some things that we want to set for goals. Our staffing, I think, is important because one of the cons that a lot of people are concerned about is the loss of jobs. In our case, we started off with 161 authorized positions that were around the county working. We still have 161 authorized positions today. We have actually 138 people working. We're a little short-staffed on the operations side. But I wanted to show you this graph because part of consolidation is you've taken the dispatchers from an agency, whether it's law enforcement, fire, EMS, and you've created this department, and they now have growth opportunities. So most of our admin and IT people have actually come from the floor and grown into another position. So giving them those growth opportunities also allows you to give them the opportunity to stay with you and not move on to somewhere else. We also have communications specialists. Those people have elevated themselves up to a higher level. We actually run a real-time information center where if there's an incident occurring right now, these specialists are going through social media or all sorts of documents or other websites or anything else they can use to find more information about that specific incident. It's not a real-time crime center. We're not solving crimes. We're addressing incidents. So if I could give you an example, we often get the call, and I'm sure most 911 centers do, hi, I'm a mom in Detroit. My daughter is friends with someone on Facebook. They live in Charleston, and she says she's going to kill herself. We know her name is Susie. That's all we know about her. We actually find those people, and we have found several of those people, and we've actually saved lives. I tell you all that because consolidation offers opportunities as well in our case, where growth and advancement and betterment for the community. I wanted to show you some of our numbers and why it's important in that a lot of 911 centers across the country are handling 911 wireline and wireless calls. Many of them have gone to text to 911. We also have something called 911helpme.com, which is an online reporting tool. We get automated alarms and 10-digit numbers. All that to say that we've evolved from just answering a 911 telephone to using so many different technologies to better provide service to the community. And so at this point in time, we've got 32 agencies we're serving, and our consolidated dispatch group or our dispatch board is the one that oversees all of that. And that board is made up of all of our chiefs, our sheriff, our EMS director, and that's been one of the benefits of bringing everybody to the table as well. Former Sheriff Al Cannon said to me one time, he said, Jim, he says, before consolidation, I didn't even know the fire chiefs' names. Now I've got them on speed dial and I'm going to lunch with them. So it brings people together because they're forced to act and make decisions together for the better of everyone. One of the concerns Jill will go over, we're going to look at some pros and cons, but our response times and dispatch times. As you can see on the call answering side of the house, we're meeting and exceeding standards now. On that time to pick up and dispatch fire, rescue, or EMS, we're a little below the standards, but we know why we're below the standards. It's really more about caller location. I think Greenville probably runs into the same problem as Charleston County in that we get a lot of tourists, and they don't really know where they are when they're calling us. So we have to first identify where they are before we can actually send them help. So you saw the number of agencies. We did about 20. We're doing 16 fire departments, 8 law enforcement agencies. When you look at the departments we're servicing, we have Folly Beach listed up there. We answered 911 calls for Folly Beach, but Folly Beach has decided they want to maintain their own dispatch. And I think that's an important part of consolidation. So early on in the process, Folly Beach was dispatched fully by us, but what they did was they closed their station at night. And the public that they were serving did not like the fact that they could not just walk into their police station 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they took their dispatch function back, and I think that's the important piece to recognize in all consolidations. There are functions that those dispatchers are doing that are not just 911, in many cases. In some cases, they're taking the parking fees or permits, they're staffing the front desk. So in any consolidation, you have to think about how you're going to provide that service to the community so you don't degrade the service. I know that in Charleston's case, we took the sheriff's dispatchers, who were also the people that answered his admin line. So the county gave the sheriff's office FTEs and funding for that staffing. So again, those are things that you have to consider when you're considering a consolidation. We also do non-traditional agencies, and that's turned out to be quite interesting. So we actually take all of the 911 calls for Joint Base Charleston by contract, and they actually pay us for that. And so I was very proud of the fact that I'm doing a service for the federal government, and they're cutting me a check for it. And so in this case, we're taking all of their calls, we're entering the information into the computer-aided dispatch, we're sending that over to them electronically, and they're doing their own dispatch. And in Folly Beach's case, they're on our CAD system, so we've also made information sharing a top priority, and we've found ways to do that in a technology kind of way as well. We also dispatch and get paid by the National Park Service. Saying that is because we focus fully on the mission of public safety communications around the county, so I'm not just doing it for an agency or a single service. I'm doing it for all of the counties, so we're able to welcome all of these other partners in. We are accredited through the CALEA, Commission for Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, as a communications center. That helps out our other law enforcement agencies, so I have 5 agencies that are also law enforcement agencies that are accredited under CALEA. And what happens in that process is when they go through their accreditation team contacts us and says, are you accredited? Can you send us a copy of yours? And that's it. So it makes it a very simple process for them. We have 3 of our fire departments that are accredited through CFAI. 2 of them have Class 1 ratings, 1 has a Class 2. I say that because especially in the fire department world, when you're getting an ISO rating, Insurance Service Office, which affects your community, we get all 10 points for communications. At one point, we received 8 points, and I called them up and said, no, that's not going to do. What do I need to do to get all 10? They told us, we did it. So again, being community-minded, because having that ISO rating and affecting your insurance, your community's insurance, does make a difference. We're also accredited through the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch for our fire and emergency medical dispatch. We are certified through NECMEC and all of these others that you see in front of you. So we make sure that not only are we providing a service, but we're providing a high-quality service, not only to the citizens, but for those agencies we serve so they can maintain their accreditations. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons. You see where I use the word cost efficiencies. I remember as a consultant, I did a presentation for a council in Texas, and they said, well, Mr. Lake, how much is this going to cost us? You know, we should be saving money. And the first thing I say to them is, do you have a building that you can put this in? They said, well, no, we'll have to build something. Well, then you're already spending money. But there are cost efficiencies that you will have because you're no longer buying equipment for all of your PSAPs, like we were doing. You're no longer providing staffing for all of those PSAPs, which we were doing. And so when we talk about cost efficiencies, you've got to look about what you're trying to gain. And usually cost efficiencies, we're gaining a better product, and it's probably costing us maybe as much or a little bit more, but we're getting a better product out of it. In our case, we were predicted to reach our midpoint, our break-even point in year 10, and we actually did that in year 11. So we achieved what we were aiming for. Improved response times. I will tell you, it's public knowledge, so I'm not telling you anything out of school. We had an incident over the weekend where a rental truck killed a pedestrian, hit 2 others. There were 7 injured, one killed, and that involved multiple police departments, multiple fire departments, EMS, and all of that was coordinated through our Consolidated Emergency Communications Center. That's the benefit of that. Instead of having to call someone or ask someone over the radio, having all those resources in the same room, being able to coordinate that, we see that on a daily basis. Whether it's a large structure fire or a major law enforcement incident, especially if we start getting into an incident where there's an officer-involved shooting, all sorts of law enforcement agencies are coming from all different directions. We're able to coordinate that and make sure it's a safe response. Standardization of procedures, that's one of the things that the board does. So in our case, our Consolidated Dispatch Board has to approve all of our SOPs. If one agency says, I would like to do this, if it doesn't impact the others, it's okay. However, if it has an impact to everyone, then they all need to come together and discuss it, and then they approve it. Excuse me. This ensures that everyone responding knows how that response is going to go and how they operate. Technology integration. So when we first consolidated, some of the agencies had software on laptops in the cruisers, and some had them in the fire trucks. We were able to get a grant which got all of our agencies hardware and one software platform, because they were now all on the same computer-aided dispatch system, so they all can communicate with each other. So essentially how this works is if I have a medical call and I drop a fire department on that call, the fire department now gets all of that information that the EMS units have as well. That makes a big difference when you're responding to some type of incident and you can see what everybody else is seeing. It's not you're getting part of the story and somebody else is getting part of the story on that side. Better resource allocation, especially in major events. We have procedures in place to make sure that we don't overextend an agency or we shortchange an agency that might be responding to a call. I think one of the things that we're very proud of in Charleston County is our automatic aid. And essentially what that means is that the closest fire truck goes. I think we have 7 automatic aid partners now. In the community, one time, I remember a meeting, I had a community constituent say, if I have a fire at my house, I want my fire department to arrive. And I said to him, respectfully, sir, if your house is on fire, as long as a fire truck shows up at water, I don't think you really care what the name is on the side of the truck. He had to agree. So again, I think that being able to coordinate from that perspective, and it's not only law enforcement, but EMS and fire all benefit from having it all in one place. Increased collaboration. We work on all sorts of projects together, and that's not just the 911 center. That's the agencies we service as well. We did a project a few years ago where the sheriff's office came to us and said, you know, we don't really all know how to respond to a school shooting together. How about we do that? And so we brought in formal training. and simplified management. So the good news about this is if something bad happens, it all falls on my desk when it comes to communications, as compared to trying to figure out the pieces of who is responsible for this or who is responsible for that. It certainly makes it easier for the staff as well. They know who they're reporting to, and they know how the management structure is within our department. Cons, initial costs. There are some costs to start up. And especially, again, as you heard me say, if there's not a building, then there has to go somewhere. So in our case, we spent $29 million to build the 911 center in EOC back in 2011, 2012, just to give you a sense of that cost. But that certainly was a good deal at that time. Certainly, I don't think we could get the same building at this time for that amount of money. But there's also some startup costs, training, overtime, admin positions to get that piece of it moving along. One of the costs, or cons, is job losses. I've heard that over and over again, but I've never been or heard specifically of anybody losing their job in a consolidation. Generally, 911 centers are already short-staffed, so there's already open positions. Generally, the 911 centers do not have enough authorized positions to begin with. So especially if you're building a larger organization, you have admin, you have IT, there's places for all of these people to fall into. Now, I will tell you, quite honestly, lesson learned is where you put that 911 center as well. As an example, in Charleston County, we had fire dispatchers in Johns Island, which is about, without traffic, is probably about 45 minutes from where we are. Well, those dispatchers didn't want to drive all that length. So some of them came, most of them didn't. So again, it all depends on geographically where you're located. You might have some decide that they don't want to do that. One of the cons that's been brought forward is loss of local knowledge. Yes. And that was one of the reasons why Folly Beach did not want to stay with us. And I say this out of respect for them, because this is their standard. They wanted us to know by the person's voice who was calling, and I didn't have to ask the address because I knew where they were. When we talk about loss of local knowledge, your dispatchers probably do know people by their voice and where they're located in their community. So that's one of the things that you have to look at when you build a consolidated center. You have to count on that knowledge transfer. You have to count on maps and geography and technology to help you identify who those callers are and where they're located. Overburdening your resources, that's one of the cons that's been mentioned. And one of the things that we found is that, especially in a consolidated 911 center, sharing that workload amongst many people has made it easier as compared to if you're the only dispatcher on and you're now taking 911 calls and dispatching for a major incident. But that is something to look at, because you're having all of those calls come into one place. Let me give you an example. Charleston County is too big to have any one center back us up if we were to go down. So in our case, we have a coastal cooperative where our calls will go out to all of those cooperative members so that not one center is overloaded or overburdened at one time. Resistance to change. In our case, people didn't like change. We knew that when we consolidated an agency, that sometimes we would only get about 30% of those people coming over because they just didn't want to operate in that environment. Let me give you an example. We had fire dispatchers that they ate when the firefighters ate. They worked when the firefighters had calls. They slept if there were no calls. Coming into a consolidated 911 center where you're busy all night long, you can't sleep, there's a different condition there. And so there was some resistance to change from those staff members. Also, when you think about law enforcement agencies are usually susceptible to this, turning over your dispatchers and the responsibility for that call handling process. That's a big undertaking for some law enforcement officials. Fire, somewhat, but they operate pretty much the same way, so they're more willing to give more. That's what we saw in Charleston County. Geographic challenges. Again, we talked about the hiring process. In our case, we've got a long county separated by a lot of bridges. There are different geographies within the city of North Charleston and Charleston versus that down in or up in Awendaw or down in Johns Island. So there are some challenges that you have to overcome, but you know these going in, you plan for them, you prepare for them. Dependency on technology. Yes, we depend on technology, especially since we're not right there in the community. So we have to have multiple redundancies in place so that if systems go down, that we can still communicate throughout the county. But I think today it's not much different in today's environment. Most law agencies and fire departments, they count on their radios, they count on their mobile data devices. So I think for the most part, although it is a con in that we are all dependent more on technology, there are ways to mitigate that. So in our case, we are sharing multiple systems, which has helped cost efficiencies, but it's also helped in information sharing. So we have the same computer-aided dispatch system, and so all of these agencies are putting all of that information into one place that can be shared out. In our case, our fire departments all agreed to do one fire RMS. In that case, that is not a dispatch function. We charge them for the person that manages that, and they pay for the software, but they find that because of that, they're getting a cost savings because it's not them purchasing an RMS, not them providing a person for that. Mobile data is the same case. Mobile data is through the same computer-aided dispatch. They all have the same units, whether it's law, fire, and EMS. If they're all going to the same call, they are all getting the same information. AVL, we know where all our vehicles are located as well as our radios. We're using GPS in all the portables, so we can see where those resources are, especially if we're doing an automatic aid situation, we can pull them over very quickly. We provide a common operating picture. It's called Alistar, and essentially all of our agencies have access to this, and except law sees everything, fire doesn't see law, EMS doesn't see law. And they've agreed to that. That was a board decision. I'd like to emphasize that. We're not making decisions for the agencies. They're making those decisions. And reverse notifications, public safety network, station alerting, all of those things we were able to do because we are consolidated and not each agency doing their own thing. Fiscal is important. So we have about a $12 million operating budget. We get it from general fund, wireline, wireless. We also have agency shared costs. If they want us to do something that's not 911 related, they're paying for it and they're happy with that because they're sharing the cost along. It doesn't include the facility costs. One of the things that we're focusing on is trying to find other revenue sources than what you see there now. We recently were awarded $1.29 million for a CAD-to-CAD system so we can connect to Dorchester and Berkeley County. We have yet to see that money, so we'll still have our fingers crossed that we will get it at some point. So what have we achieved? Information sharing. Our agencies know what's going on around them, and we're very proud to say that because it's not like just because the town line is here, we don't know what's going on in the next agency. We provide newsletters. We provide all of our information as far as our metrics and other data on our county website so the public can see that as well. So it's not about just information sharing amongst the agencies, but we're doing it with the public. We provide a live time traffic dashboard for the media and for the public so they can actually see where crashes are occurring, where roads are closed. So we are happy to share our information out to the appropriate sources. Our agencies cooperate together. There is definitely, because of consolidation, there is more mutual aid, automatic aid between the fire departments. We're able to get better responses between EMS and fire. Our law agencies, they're absolutely awesome. They step up anywhere they can. But again, when we sit down at the table as a board, they're a board looking at the greater good and not just the agencies specifically, individually. We have achieved a higher quality service. We're accredited. I showed you those. We make mistakes. Everybody does. But we account for those. We own up for those. We take the appropriate action. And I think that transparency has also gained the public's trust in how we operate and what we do. We talked about the fire mutual aid, increased public awareness. A lot of our public is better educated because we get out in the public to tell them what we're doing and how we operate, and they understand that we are a separate department that supports them, and they're very supportive of us. We did learn some lessons, and there's more, but these are some of the top ones. Management control. If you, in Charleston's case, we create a civilian new department, and we have CJIS information coming in, we still have to have somebody that's willing to be the management control, a law enforcement chief, in our case, the sheriff, management control in case there are any information releases that shouldn't have happened or disciplinary actions related to that. HIPAA is interesting. We're still sorting through that, realizing that we thought it was taken care of. So in our case, Charleston County is really a hybrid organization. We have EMS, that's HIPAA, has to be HIPAA compliant. Our dispatch center doesn't, but you have to have rules in place, you have to have policies in place that describe that to make sure that legally you're covered. Hire early and often. You don't want to get behind the staffing curve in a consolidated center because you will have service issues. You'll have quality issues. One of the things I tell people who are building, you can't build it big enough. We did not build big enough. We tried to convince the county this was going to happen, and we were going to have agencies want to come in and join us, and they said, you can only build for what you know. And so we're not big enough, but the good news is we are sufficient for what we have right now. I think also, especially as I talk to other communities about this, invite everyone to the table. Think about who would be part of that. Like in our case, Joint Base Charleston National Park Service, they were not thought about in the first place. They should have been. There are other agencies, the College of Charleston and other universities. Bring them to the table to begin with, to ensure that everybody's at the table, they all have a thought or an opportunity. Public safety IT. When we went to the county and we first opened, I still have a great IT director. He said, Jim, we don't do 24/7. You're going to have your own IT department. Okay. And so we actually have 13 IT specialists that work for us. And again, you didn't see that 161 go up. We've maintained within our authorized positions. And at least half of that IT staff, we grew from the floor, from the 911 center. Biggest thing is the impact on the people doing the job. We had some people leave us because they did not want to operate in that large environment. They liked the smaller environment. But we've had many others stay with us and thank us because we gave them opportunity for growth, that they were no longer just dispatchers. They had the opportunities to grow to supervisors, managers, other positions. So I think it's how are you going to impact the people that are actually doing the job? They're the important ones to remember in all this process. I would be more than happy to take any questions you may have.
Board members, would you? Okay. Mr. Joy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming, by the way. I noticed the Citadel isn't on the non-traditional. That's probably, is it, because we got a lot of disciplined cadets over there that don't have any issues?
They,
So,
for sure,
sure.
no
I
issues
think
at
that's
all.
probably it.
We actually
Dr.
have-
Blackwell knows.
We have had conversations with them.
Good.
The way they are set up, though, they are happy more with just information sharing. They don't really need
Yeah,
us.
I understand. Wanted to kind of go in order a little bit. So it says you started the process in 2008 and then formally started the consolidation in 2009.
Yes, sir. So in 2006, the county hired consultants to do the assessment, which took about 2 years, year and a half. And then that 2008, 2007 to 2008, it took about a year for everybody to actually sign the agreement.
Okay.
And then they hired me in October 2008 after a 3-month search process.
Okay. And then 2013, full consolidation was achieved. And how have you seen the growth since 2013? You've seen more participation, obviously.
We've seen more participation, but because of the community's growing, we've also had to add positions in the center, more radio positions, more call takers. I think when we first started, we did a phased approach because we should do that. You shouldn't just do it all at once. So we did a phased approach. So we had a lot of agencies on board prior to being in the new building in 2013. So we had learned some lessons and we saw the growth. And so by the time we moved into the new building, we were pretty prepared for that.
Okay. And then one of the kind of pros and cons you listed out was their initial costs. And if you can remind me the initial cost on the building, and did you start with 12 million as an operational budget, or where did you guys start?
So the good news is I am here as a Charleston County representative. So I will tell you about Charleston County.
Yeah.
Charleston County made the decision not to charge the agencies. So when they consolidated, they would pay year one, their full cost as assessed by the consultants. Year two, half cost. And year 3 and forward, they would pay no cost. So the county absorbed that gradually going forward. So the initial budget that they had given me prior to consolidation, they gave me about $1 million or so just to start putting stuff together, and then transitioned in phases the entire budget.
Gotcha. And how you mentioned the building costs? Can you remind me what the building costs when you originally
About
built it?
$29 million.
29.
It's 39,000 square feet or so.
Okay. And would you say you said that is right now is not as adequate as you would like, but I don't know if you could speak to, obviously we have a larger population, so if it's you guys are at 39,000 square feet, it's safe to say we would need much bigger.
There is the potential. I really couldn't tell you without assessing that, but
Yeah.
in our case, what we have found is that our emergency management department is growing and doing more. Our consolidated 911 center, we're adding more radio positions and call taker positions because we keep adding people. We invite them to come live and stay with us, and they do.
Yeah.
I think you probably are experiencing the same thing here.
Oh, yeah. And I guess one of my last questions, you talked about loss of local knowledge, overburdening resources. What, if any, challenges can you speak to as far as the dispatchers go? Dispatchers and 911 call takers coming from a law enforcement side, from an EMS side to a fire side. The challenges in training up those people who don't have any experience in taking calls for law enforcement, don't have any experience in taking calls for fire, and so on.
Great question. So when we started, the incumbent dispatchers, we told them that they could choose what they wanted to do. So if they were law dispatchers and that's all they wanted to do, they could do just law dispatch. If they were just fire and they just wanted to do fire EMS, so we laid that out. With all of the new people we hired, we required them to do a dispatch and a call taking. So we need you to call take and pick fire EMS or law to start. And then our pay structure is built that the more you do, the more you get paid. So it incentivizes them to do that. But again, especially the incumbent coming on, we didn't scare them into saying, you've got to do it all.
Yeah. That makes sense. All right, I'm good. Thank you very much for coming.
Welcome, sir.
Okay. Anyone else on the board?
Counselor Russo took all mine,
He did?
so knocked it out of the park. Yeah, so I guess I do have one question. how much faster has your call time response gotten since implementing this? Do you have like a figure to that?
Yes. And I guess I won't name the agency, but one agency that, if you're asking about the call answering times, probably easily 30% faster than one particular agency.
Okay.
I say that because it amazed me that most of them weren't actually keeping track of their call times. So it was very difficult for us to come in and do a one-to-one comparison. So the few agencies that were, we were actually able to show the progress we had made, but most of them didn't keep track of that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Shaw?
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for coming. Sorry I'm late, too. My question, I guess, is if a body like our council was interested in starting, you talked about a consultant's assessment. Is there a step to take before that, or is that the first step?
So in presenting to all sorts of bodies across the country, I recommend your first step is to sit down with your chiefs and the sheriff and say, okay, where are you all in this process? I wouldn't recommend that you go out spending money without knowing you have the buy-in in the process.
We might have to pay you for that advice. That's pretty good.
Okay, Mr. Lake, I really appreciate that. So the only question I have, well, maybe a two, is the diversified dispatch. Because we have now some that do fire, that do in our law enforcement center. So you gave the new hires on the consolidation process, you gave them the choice to do it all or do a particular discipline, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the new hires that you put in, you gave them, now they are the discipline, they have the diversified requirement, and that increases their salary, as you mentioned. How did they receive that from the new, and did you have any interdiscipline selectees want to go diversified?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
So the incumbents that already had a position, many of them did want to do more. I think it was more the knowledge that they didn't have to. And so even off the top of my head, I probably can think of 3 that didn't do another discipline. And they do an outstanding job of doing what they do.
Excellent. And the other question is, how does private ambulatory service integrate into a consolidated dispatch? And let me elaborate a little bit, because I know most counties now do their own ambulatory service, whether it's ALS or BLS. But it would seem responsible enough to me through the dispatch consolidation process, if I had more private ambulatory services to handle the BLS, would that align with the consolidated dispatch? Or would it not play at all?
So I can tell you what we can do, whether or not it's acceptable or not. In our case in Charleston, we use emergency medical dispatch. We are accredited, so we know we're doing it right. We could send some of those lower level, what we would refer to as alpha level calls, out to private services. So that is an option. We can do that. We do have paramedics and basic trucks in Charleston County, and we are currently assigning basic level service trucks to those lower level calls. So it can be done. But again, I don't know the legality or the organizational structure that would have to happen, but it can be done.
Yes, sir. And the last thing, just to follow up, is with the ISO rating. The ISO rating is a derivative that's given on your response times, correct? That's transferred to the insurance.
So yes, that's part of it. So
Okay.
the 10 points, it's also the technical infrastructure to receive calls, the generator, backup power supplies. But in that 10 points they give us, there are certain standards we have to achieve, and one of those is dispatch.
Right, and there is a standard minimum that you must maintain regardless if you're consolidated or not. That would be correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that higher the rating that you check all blocks through that ISO reporting criteria, that benefits everyone in the county, not just a certain industry or disciplines. Would that be correct?
I can only tell you what I know, sir, and I know that the higher the rating, the less insurance costs.
Perfect.
That's,
Thank you very much. And again, if no one else has any questions, I'll do something. If anyone in the audience would have a question, I am open to that. As a chairman, I will extend that. Would anyone have a question for Mr. Lake? Yes, sir. If you would step up to the mic, if you don't mind, Mr. Lake, he'll join you there.
Thank you, Councilman.
Yes, sir. Good to see you, Chief.
Dr. Lake, can you tell us again who's in your building? Because it's not just, from my understanding correct, it's not just your agency. Can you, so talking about square footage and all that, who's actually in that building? Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, sir.
so for our building, we have the Consolidated Emergency Communications Center, we have the Emergency Operations Center. Those are the two main functions. Also within the building, we have our own facilities people. We have the offices to support the 911 center and emergency operations. We also have I don't think this ain't giving away any secrets. We back up all the county's data to our center as well. It's the safest building in the county. So the county IT has a function there as well as the cafeteria, conference rooms, things like that.
So not only a consolidated dispatch center, you're a consolidated personnel center.
Maybe.
Kind of a little gray area. But again, thank you so much. Anyone? No? Mr. Lake, we are very much in appreciation of your time, especially your drive up here. We understand that. And I'm so grateful that you took this time. And again, if ever I can reciprocate the favor, any of our board would do so. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor for adjourn?
Aye.
We are adjourned.